What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Happy Saturday, everybody. Okay, I hope everybody's doing okay, especially in the northeast of the US, because as I understand, there's a really hardcore winter storm going on. So please be safe. Um, Today, I had a scheduled interview with my next guest. And as time wanted it, and probably destiny wanted it, he just released his latest, and it's pretty wild. And I'm really thankful that I get to talk to him on the same day that he released it, because we're going through that and we're going through some of his other work. And he's been doing amazing work for a while now. He's the founder of the Liberation Times and a really good journalist. I want you all to please welcome Mr. Christopher Sharp.
Hey man,
How you doing, Christopher?
I'm good, thank you. I'm doing really, really well. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm a really big fan of your show, and it's cool to see me next to you. So it's great.
Likewise, dude. You're amazing, and I'm a really big fan of yours too. I've covered a bunch of your stuff, and today you just released something that I found pretty mind blowing. You do a lot of really mind blowing stuff because you seem to have a lot of really insight sources that give you a lot of detailed information about what's going on with all of this. But today you released this, and I want to go through it. And let's just start with the title, if that's okay with you. New allegations link former national intelligence leaders Clapper and O'Sullivan to UFO shoot down and retrieval program. So, shoot down is the one term that really alarms me because so these guys are shooting these things down. What do you think about that? And how did you come about with this information? How did you start writing about it? What was the process like?
Yeah, no. Thank you very, very much. So obviously, I think I was just very, very alarmed when I first heard about these allegations, and it's not like it's just coming from a single source. You know, I said in the article it's three sources, and you know, it's not like people enjoy telling me this. And we're talking about people that know Clapper as well. Let's say very, very, very well. So very, very alarmed because when you know the credibility of the sources talking to you about this, it really brings it home about how credible and how seriously these allegations need to be taken. I think always in relation to these stories, what happens is, usually you'll get approached by one source who will say that I've got this story for you, these are the allegations. And then what you need to do is you need to then go on a journey of corroboration. That's when you know you've got a good story, if it could be corroborated by multiple sources that aren't always connected, that aren't always talking to each other, that aren't always, really enthusiastic about kind of confirming either, let's say. So that's when you know you've got a good story that's, as solid as it can be in relation to this topic. So I just think it's really alarming, and I was searching. I've been working on it for weeks now, and I've been searching all this while just for a reason why they're being shot down. Is it because they're hostile? Is it because a treaty has been signed with another faction that we've got to shoot these things down? Or is it just a bunch of opportunists being that we can take all these things down, let's retrieve them, let's try and get their technology? But then again, you think to yourself, well, actually, if they've just recovered one or two, shouldn't that be enough? So there's so many questions that need to be answered when it comes to this. And it's good having names attached to them as well, in terms of Stephani O'Sullivan and James Clapper as well.
Yeah, loving the France kit, by the way. I wanted to point that out because we're both football fans. And thank you for wearing that. I didn't think about wearing one today because I'm like, I'm going to be with Chris Sharp, the journalist. So I got to be presentable, but thank you, man. That's really amazing.
Okay. I did it for you. I see you wearing cool football shirts. I'm going to do this for Pavel. I've got my Roma shirt. I've got this one. Yeah. So
definitely appreciate that. I do want to continue with this because he's going to focus on James Clapper. A few weeks ago, David Grush was on Megyn Kelly's show, and he ousted basically Clapper as one of the crash retrievals leaders, so to speak. He ran one of these programs, according to David Grush.
General Clapper, the former DNI in the documentary. I certainly applaud him for at least speaking out in general. He goes on, I believe, I've only seen clips of Age of Disclosure, not the whole thing, where there was a program when he was the director of national intelligence where they were tracking these vehicles over Area 51, of course, the famed classified test location. And I'm a little bit disappointed as a fellow Air Force officer, and certainly General Clapper rose to the ranks as 3-star general. That's all he said in the documentary, that was a program he was aware of. In fact, without being inappropriate, I will say that General Clapper was well aware of the crash retrieval issue, managed the crash retrieval issue, and when he was the DNI, USDI, and DIA director, he placed people in critical roles to manage this issue, both publicly and I'll just say non-publicly as well. And I'll allow the audience distill what I'm saying at the risk of being inappropriate or going too far with my discussion. So General Clapper, Stephani O'Sullivan, other folks in the IC that are well aware of this issue, that were in rooms discussing this issue, I ask you to be greater leaders on this. I should not be the only former military officer and intelligence official that is being completely candid with the information that they were exposed to. So perhaps
and once again, James Clapper understates what he knows and what he's done. A new year means
you got detailed information about this of Clapper's connections that go back all the way back to Bobby Ray Inman.
I started out extremely skeptical about this whole thing. I thought this was just rubbish from the tabloids, but I was surprised to find thousands of U.S. government documents from intelligence agencies that tended to indicate that there was a little bit more to this than met the eye. So I went to seek guidance from the various highest levels of the United States intelligence community, and I was quite alarmed at what I was able to learn.
Now we are, in this report that we're now going to show, we're going to hear a conversation featuring you. Tell me the context of that conversation.
Well, I had contacted Admiral Bobby Ray Inman, who was the head of the National Security Agency in the United States, Deputy Director at CIA, Director of Naval Intelligence, and a variety of intelligence posts, a technologist, and clearly someone that, if this was really accurate, that there really were UFOs and non-human intelligence around, this is a man who had to know. So I was able to contact him thanks to a contact through Admiral Lord Hill Norton here in the UK. And this conversation, he alarmingly not only indicated that these issues were covered under national secrecy laws, but that the United States government did in fact have possession of the hardware associated with this. In other words, this was an actual physical phenomenon. As
a craft, a spaceship.
Several of them, and they were in operational condition, which I assume suggested that they had been in contact, that they had been given these craft for some reason or another, because they certainly weren't crashed vehicles.
Do you anticipate that any of the recovered vehicles would ever become available for technological research outside of the military circles?
Again, I honestly don't know. 10 years ago, the answer would have been no.
Yeah.
Whether as time has evolved, they're beginning to become more open on it, is a possibility.
A short time later, Bob Exler received this call.
Mr. Exler, this is Tom King in Admiral Inman's office. Yes, you would be breaching confidence and or violation of the secrecy laws in discussing his involvement in any matter.
I heard what you said earlier, but obviously the big problem always is the picture.
Could you speak a little bit on that? Shall we start on that first and then move up?
Yeah. So what I did was actually I bought Clapper's book, which he released, I think, in 2018, 2019. And in that, you can see the connections with Inman. I believe it was, early 80s, where he started a role with the NSA and he was basically like an intermediary between Bobby Ray Inman and who was at the NSA at the time, and another senior person in the US Air Force. So he was kind of like a go-between, and he got to see Inman up closely and got to know him quite well. And even when you look at the NSA scandal, when he basically lied in relation to what the NSA was doing, Inman was kind of like even standing up for him then. So it was quite clear that I could get the impression that Inman and Clapper know each other personally. They've known each other for decades. And another one of the things that Grush stated as well is that Dick Cheney was basically the head guy when it came to this stuff, the mob boss. And again, that relationship went back decades.
Yeah.
I found an old interview with Dick Cheney.
All this news that the U.S. Conducted surveillance on our own allies. Some of the documents posted by or leaked by Edward Snowden to the media indicate that these programs started in 2002. Why spy on an ally?
Jake, if there were such a program, it'd be classified and I couldn't talk about it. It'd be totally inappropriate. And I haven't been in the loop now, obviously, for more than 4 years. So it's just one of those subjects I couldn't discuss.
Without getting specific, on a theoretical basis, what is the interest of the United States in conducting surveillance on a country or a leader who is a clear ally of the United States?
I've got to go with the answer I've given you. Let me say this: we do have a fantastic intelligence capability worldwide against all kinds of potential issues and concerns. We are vulnerable, as was shown on 9/11, and you never know what you're going to need when you need it. And the fact is, we do collect a lot of intelligence, and without speaking about any particular target or group of targets, that intelligence capability is enormously important to the United States, to our conduct of foreign policy, to defense matters, to economic matters, and I'm a strong supporter of it.
Again, relating to the NSA stuff, and he didn't see anything wrong with what was happening with the NSA, basically tapping into what people were like conversations and stuff. And again, like he confirmed that he met Clapper 25 years prior in Korea, which would be over 30 years ago now. So yeah, you just look at all these relationships and these connections and stuff, and you think, well, actually, this kind of makes it even more plausible because all these different nodes know each other.
Yeah. And we can talk about these two guys as well, because it's not just Clapper. When the Age of Disclosure documentary came out, and I saw that both John Brennan and him were involved in the film, and knowing what they have been involved with the whole James Snowden stuff and the spying on people problem, and that they objectively lied under oath about that. I was like, why would they be involved in this? And then when David Grush came out to say what he said on Megyn Kelly, it sort of made sense. So I wanted to ask you, though, what do you think about their involvement in Age of Disclosure? And how do you think the recent statements from Grush affect people like these two when it comes to this amnesty proposal that Age of Disclosure is seeking?
Well, I guess it would make sense if you're shooting down UAP and you're lying about it as well, which they may have well done. There's obviously some really dirty stuff happening, and they may want amnesty. There's two sides to this. There's one camp who are basically saying that, look, they're speaking about it. No one else is doing this at a senior position. At least they're saying something, whereas others are keeping their mouth shut. And then there's others basically saying, actually, they've done a lot of bad stuff. And obviously, they're just looking for a way out. But then again, in my mind, I'm thinking, well, actually, they're quite old now. I mean, so I don't know if in terms of amnesty, I mean, how long have they been looking at? They're so old now, both of them are. How many years they really have left? So yeah, this is something I'm still trying to navigate in terms of reasons why. Is it just Amnesty? Is it Amnesty just of them, or is it other younger people involved as well, maybe? So that's something I'm actively exploring. And yeah, so it's an interesting thing. And yeah, people, there do seem to be some people who think that those two are basically running amok whilst in senior positions, running this UFO stuff and doing all sorts of illegal activities. Again, this is something I need to have a look into, seeing if it's true. And yeah, it's interesting because, I mean, John Brennan definitely has an interest. You know, he's done an interview before. I believe as well there's something on the CIA's website which basically says that in the early 90s he requested a briefing on UFOs when he was working within the agency when he was starting out, John Brennan. So yeah, he's obviously had an interest in this for a very, very long time as well. And yeah. They worked with each other.
Yeah, and well, if you think about these this term of majestic, you know, and the quote unquote deep state, it sort of feels like people like Q and, for example, UAP Gerb and David Grush's statements. It sort of feels like they might be at least adjacent to today's iteration of said fabled group. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and it doesn't look as organized as you think it might do. I mean, it's very compartmented, I suppose, how it works. It's a bunch of fiefdoms and stuff, and there's different allegiances. You know, you'll notice, like, when you're in the UAP topic, you know, if you go into the Navy stuff, some people start to get really, really upset. It's like, no, let's focus on the Air Force. Let's focus on the Air Force. Don't focus on the Navy. And yeah, there's all those kinds of things happening, you know. So everyone's got their own different turf, and there's all different kind of games happening and stuff. So it's it does look like there is this kind of group, and I just want to know where that is now. Obviously, we know that, you know, Todd Lowry, for instance, is the current deputy director of the CIA Science and Technology Directorate. Funnily enough, he was actually, from my understanding, I may need to confirm this, maybe be able to confirm this for me, he was an acting Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security under Mattis as well. So then that starts you thinking, actually, that there seems to be a connection between the CIA's Science and Technology Directorate and the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security. So it starts that train of thought, because we know that Clapper, before he became Director of National Intelligence, was actually fulfilling that role under the late Bush administration. So that's definitely of interest, because, you know, we all remember that when the AIMSG, as it was known at the time before it became the Arrow, which is the UFO office that was put up by Gillibrand, and you know, that's the office that it was based in was the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and that is still responsible as well for the administration of this. So it's kind of like, if there is involvement on UFO programs between that office and the Directorate of Science and Technology, you're basically placing the arrow within the hornet's nest itself, because they're as guilty as well. So that's something I'm actively looking at as well. So, you know, all these connections go into your head when you're working on stories like this.
Yeah, and people, like, they haven't been paying attention, I think, to how embedded the Navy is in all of this. And you were just saying that the DNI, which is the Defense of National Intelligence, or Department of National Intelligence of the Navy, I think that the Navy has been crossing the seas for like way longer than the Air Force. They existed for way longer than the Air Force. And these USOs and the USO activity has been reported since like hundreds and hundreds of years ago. people have seen lights in the sky and objects coming in and out and all that. So I would think that they know a lot more than they give out, or we assume that they do. Do you agree with that too?
Yeah, absolutely. And you look at things kind of we brought out relating to the relationship between the Navy and the CIA and UFO programs and National Underwater Reconnaissance Office. And when you're talking about that, a lot of my sources are telling me about Operation Ivy Bells, which was a classified US Navy, CIA, and NSA mission during the Cold War to tap into Soviet undersea communication cables. And then you kind of look at that, and actually, back in 1975, it was Dick Cheney who was kind of dealing with the fallout relating to that. So you kind of see these people like Dick Cheney and Clapper, Inman, deeply embedded in these kind of these complexes involving CIA, NSA, and DoD components, because that's where it's a nexus. These connections between all these entities. It's and if someone's kind of got an oversight of all those connections where they fit in, that makes them a really, really good candidate to kind of know about the UAP topic.
Yeah, so, and you named a program too, where this lady is involved. Miss O'Sullivan and the Golden Domes. Can you explain that a little bit, please?
Yeah. So Stephani O'Sullivan. So very, very interesting person. Started out as she was an ocean engineer. An ocean engineer, and she responded to a classified ad in a newspaper while she was spending a lot of time at the Chesapeake Bay, which is also incidentally where Pax River is, and a lot of UAP activities on the Chesapeake Bay. So she was spending a lot of her time there, sees an ad for this job, gets a job at TRW, which is being swallowed up by Northrop Grumman now. And that's kind of how she got her in within the intelligence world. She's working for the Office of Naval Intelligence, and then she starts working for CIA, and that's when she gets within the Directorate of Science and Technology, and is allegedly involved in this program called Golden Domes, which is to bring down UAP by different means, basically. Electronically. It's basically a mixture of electronic and laser-based capabilities intended to bring down UAP. And it was basically saying that, as part of this program, they're able to kind of track and detect UAP as they actually manifest, which is really, really interesting when you think about that. And I'm trying to get more information on that. What does it mean by manifest? And you've always got these lingering questions. But I'm at a place now with my journalism where I'm just on the boundaries. Sources don't really want to give me further information. You're knocking on that door, and it's a difficult place, because I'm dying for more answers when it comes to this. But I think as part of this program as well, I mean, I won't say too much, but I would say as part of this program, in terms of using those laser-based and electronic capabilities, I would say there was a lot of fallout when it came to that as well. And I'd mentioned Stephani O'Sullivan's hearing. Let me use that as an example. When it was her hearing, they were talking about, I think it was called Operation Air Bridge Denial. Have you ever heard of Air Bridge Denial before?
No, I haven't. No.
It is basically a CIA program working with a bunch of other components within the US government, like the DoD, to tackle the drug traffic coming from Peru going to Colombia, in particular the aircraft. So a lot of it was basically, tackling them and taking down aircraft when they needed to. And funnily enough, it became a big thing, because I think it was 2001. the CIA, with the help of the Peruvians, took down what they thought was a drug kind of like smuggling aircraft, but it ended up being a civilian aircraft with a US citizen on board, and they ended up killing her and I think her child as well, and the aircraft got down, and that was horrific. And because of that, there was a whole inquiry into this whole program that had been run, saying, look, how often has this happened? Where else has due process not been met? Have you lied to Congress about it? And they were looking up other incidences. And it was quite funny because it was CIA Inspector General that investigated it. But I believe that she was kind of like headed up this unit to make sure that kind of like people within the CIA was brought to justice. So she was kind of like heading up to a certain extent as well, Stephani O'Sullivan. And the funny thing about that is that, we know Jonathan Wagent and the Peruvian UAP crash where he saw bodies and stuff, and that was Operation Laser Strike. That fell under this whole program, which was run by the CIA. So it was part of that. So when you look at the inquiry, you see that in March 1997, which I believe is when the Jonathan Wagent kind of like sighting happened, something was shot down over Peruvian airspace. And it's in the CIA files. Obviously, that they're going to say it's a drug aircraft or something like that. And currently we're looking into it to see if we can get some video. But I guess my overarching point here is that when you start shooting at stuff in the sky, especially when it comes to UAP and stuff, there's going to be accidents as well. Let's say it's going to happen. So I think part of this, in terms of amnesty, is basically because wrongdoings may have happened as well as part of this. Accidents may have happened. People may have got hurt. So I think that's part of the secrecy as well. If Stephani O'Sullivan had told Marco Rubio that there was such a thing, there was such a program, all of a sudden there's an investigation into it. What did you do? What wrongdoings did you do? And she may be looking at jail time potentially if there was something to these allegations and if there was some wrongdoing. So you start to get into a whole different realm here, so very interesting, but also quite distressing as well, potentially.
Yeah, and just to remember though, because I asked you about Bobby Ray Inman. He promoted Clapper in 1980. What, didn't he?
Yeah, so he presided over his promotion. So it was something that Clapper was offered the opportunity to do. He served under Inman in doing it, and he basically he's lavishes praise on Inman. He just sees him as this amazing person, basically, and it's very, very evident that they have some form of relation, which I think is quite close. They're working together. He was in the intermediate between the Air Force guy who was dealing with, who was quite senior, and Inman. So it suggests to me that knowledge may have been passed around. This could have been the way that he could have got into the UAP stuff. And obviously we know that the NSA, there's allegations about them as well in terms of Project Preserve Destiny, this kind of alleged program which is relating to communications of non-human intelligences. So you get hooked onto that one now, and it's there's a deep rabbit hole that you can go down with all this stuff, and then obviously you then had Inman, who told the UFO researcher, is it Osler, Bob Osler?
Oxler.
That the best person to go to in terms of the UAP stuff, in terms of the retrievals and stuff, would be Heinemann, who was in the 1980s the equivalent to what Stephani O'Sullivan was, the deputy director of science and technology. So there's so many different strands, that you go, and there's so many connections. It's definitely of interest, and the allegation is that Clapper had been doing this for some time. definitely when he was the Undersecretary of when he was in the when he was in the DoD as the Undersecretary for Security and Intelligence. It was going back then, but it may have gone back further as well in terms of how long he's been involved working in this, along with the CIA. So yeah, and he was very, very good friends with Robert Gates as well. And that's something else that kind of was very, very clearly evident when reading his book. So Robert Gates, another kind of high-ranking person who would be in a position to know, 15th director of the Central Intelligence Agency. So yeah, again, someone of interest, that I'm interested in finding more about. So yeah, there's so many places you can go with this story, aren't there? It's
oh yeah, and you put together a well-rounded list, timed chronologically of the Science and Technology Directorate in that article, and I think that people should go to that article. I'm going to link it in the description so they can see it. I also want to ask you about somebody who's also mentioned here, who was also involved with Clapper, who was David Grush's attorney, his former Inspector General Charles McCullough. And I ask you about him because recently on Weaponized with Jeremy and George, Dylan Borland spoke about his interaction with them and how he was treated. He was basically told after delivering what he was going to deliver in terms of information that he couldn't talk about it, that this was now classified effectively, and that if he talked about it, he was going to go to jail. Having uncovered now what you uncovered, where does his position stand now with his affiliation with Clapper, and also with the way in which he treated somebody like Dylan Borland, who has been mistreated for over a decade?
You saw my vehicles. I had pulled my 401k at this point because I knew I was done. I had filed for unemployment, which they denied me for. And on the way home, I totaled my car, and there was a police investigation, and the police had told me in confidence that my brake lines were cut. They wanted it to look like a suicide, which goes into what the VA was doing with me and the medical issues and the doctors that it resigned and all that.
So you leave somewhere you were at, next thing you know, you're pushing your brake to the floor, total the car, but you're able to get home.
Yep.
And you get home, and then of course the police see the car totaled, and they either wonder, were you sober? Is everything okay? And you invite them over. You said, come do a breathalyzer.
Yep.
They said, well, it's going to take a while.
Yep.
We're going to contact you tomorrow. And then the lead investigative officer in that case physically comes to your home.
Yep.
And warns you that somebody tried to kill you. Your brake lines were cut.
He verbatim said, the only reason I'm not charging you with a crime is because your brake lines were cut.
I'm not charging you for a crime because your brake lines were cut.
Is there a police report?
There is a police report of the totaled car, and there's a police report of what I said to the officer, which is I went out with a friend who worked for the agency. I had 2-3 drinks playing pool over the night, had some wings on the way home, car totaled.
Does it say in any police report your brake lines were cut?
I have been searching for it, no. And this is what sucks, is this is the most damning, and I know what was said to me, and this is the only thing out of all the craziness that I do have evidence to that you guys have seen, these weird polygraph tests and VA tests and all this, but the police report verbatim saying that my brake lines were cut, I am still trying to get proof of.
Yeah, I mean, he knew all these people, like when he was representing Grush, I think he did have some knowledge. He worked with Clapper. He had first-hand interactions with both Clapper and O'Sullivan, so he knew what was going on within, within the office of the director of intelligence. So he knew what was going on. There's pictures of him with O'Sullivan as well. He would have been in a position to potentially know what was going on. And from my understanding, what happened was that when the email hacks started happening in relation to Hillary Clinton and Podesta,
the WikiLeaks,
yeah, he took the fall for that, from my understanding. So seems to me that he's someone, who does kind of like think, actually, I've been mistreated as well as McCullough, in his case. I don't know if that directly relates to Clapper or anything, but it seems to me that he knows very well what was going on. He was dealing with these people day in, day out. He's a serious person as well. So if there was nothing to this, he would know straight away and he would just leave it alone. But the fact that he's actually had first-hand interactions, he knows these people personally, and I'm betting Clapper's name's been out there for a long, long time. It tells you something. It adds more kind of like credibility to this whole thing, the fact that he's involved, So, but yeah, in terms of Dylan, and Dave and Matt Brown, I would say this, that there are people like Clapper, and other high-ranking people, let's say, and people who've well off, let's say, as well. They're fine, if they get amnesty, they're fine. What about the people that are kind of like lower down the chain who spoke out, and now no one will employ them, or they've had their security clearances taken away, and they're left with nothing? What happens? What happens to those people now? They kind of get left behind, and they've been treated badly as well. Like, so what do they get as part of this? What's the deal with them? So if we're talking about amnesty for the people who kind of like inflicted all these horrible things upon the likes of Matthew Brown and Dylan and Dave, what about those guys? What about the victims? What do they get? I think there needs to be a conversation about that. And I think that, if there is going to be a new UAP Disclosure Act, that needs to kind of like be covered as well in terms of what's going to happen to these whistleblowers. They need to get some form of compensation at least.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you about that specifically because recently you made a tweet where you talk about people like them being cornered and feeling like they're completely left on their own and ostracized and demonized. And even, I dare say, some of the people that are involved in the control disclosure movement, they don't seem to be paying much attention to people like Dylan or Matthew. And when Matthew was supposed to be at the hearing in November 2024, he wasn't there. I know that this was like a sort of like a technical reason why he wasn't there. It was like a strategic decision, but he's still been treated like shit, honestly. And about Dylan too, like Dylan claims that his brake lines were cut off at a certain point. So that's attempted murder, and yeah, I think that the conversation needs to go there. What about the ostracized ones? What about those who don't have businesses? Like, for example, I don't know, Jake Barber has businesses, as far as I understand. He doesn't have that problem of, suffering from either being blacklisted or not having any type of money to coexist, to live, and they're just ignoring them. And yeah, I do agree with you that the conversation needs to go there. And I just think because Jeff Nuccetelli at Seoul, just this past Seoul conference, he said something really interesting about Dylan Borland being sort of like a dead man's switch of multiple people.
Let me give a little bit of background. I'm going to speak about my very good friend Dylan Borland and how he got involved, and maybe that'll give you some context about the seriousness of the situation. So there are many whistleblowers that are not known. They've been in this fight for 13 years on their own. They have lost their clearances. They went through incredible harassment at work. They lost their livelihoods, destroyed their social networks. Some of them ended up divorced and alone and broken. And many of those individuals are still in that state now, and they don't have anywhere to go. So Dylan knows many of these people, and he has been supporting them. They have a network. And a few years ago, things got so serious that they believed that their lives were in very serious jeopardy. And the plan that they had formulated to protect themselves, Dylan was what you call the dead man switch. He volunteered that if the situation got to the point where they felt that their lives were in danger, that Dylan would be the one to come forward and disclose. And this would be the equivalent of catastrophic disclosure from these unknown whistleblowers. So Dylan did that. He is the most reluctant whistleblower, I think, probably in history. So Dylan went to Congress with the information. He told Congress what was happening and what they feared was going to happen to their friends and families. Congress tried to help, and they sent him to Arrow. And then things got bad. So what happened was Dylan gave his testimony. He told them everything from the beginning about his childhood, his life, everything he had seen, all the details. And then when he was done, they said, "Thank you. We're classifying this top secret, and you can never speak about it to anyone. And the only person that can declassify it would have to come from the executive branch. So thank you for the information. Now shut up and never speak again, because your life will be over. You will go to prison. You will be charged with espionage. Right? We might seek the death penalty." And then he had to go to the Inspector General, and things got worse. And things continued to get worse. The more he tried to help, the more he tried to protect his friends, the more pressure they applied. And he's been dealing with that for 13 years.
So I think, what the hell is Dylan sitting on? And if they keep treating him like this, I wouldn't do that. If he really is sitting on something, I would probably listen to what he has to say and try to help him out so he can get out of the situation he's currently in. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why Liberation Times, this is why I do what I do, with the voice of the whistleblowers. I've always liked the underdog, and I want to tell these people's stories. I want to help them. Yeah, definitely. They need help, and they are being cornered right now. And the momentum seems to have stopped. I would say that there have been threats, which you're probably aware of as well, to staffers within the Senate Intel Committee. And I'm just hoping that anyone who has been affected is rebuilding their lives, because what happened was serious. I don't know if that's the reason why momentum has stopped. I don't know whether that's the reason why Gillibrand, Round, and everyone like that have basically stopped really being interested in this topic anymore. Maybe they're forced down, because right now it seems like they've been abandoned by the Senate, by the House. The first UAP hearing for like decades happened within the Intelligence Committee, within the House. Now, then all of a sudden that goes to a Republican committee when Democrats lose control. You have Mike Turner, and he's kind of like the anti kind of like disclosure guy. Whereas in Democratic control, they were really open towards hearing about the topic. But that's a no-go area now. And also, all the other committees, they're just no-go areas. The chairs aren't interested. Mike Rounds didn't even seem to know that the UAP Disclosure Act hadn't been included within the National Defense Authorization Act. He didn't seem to realize it hadn't been included, but at least within the Senate version. So it just tells me that there's just not that much interest in it anymore. And I just feel heartbroken for people like Dylan, because, apart from, Representative Burleson, Burchett, and Luna, who is looking out for them? And I really do praise their representatives, but at the end of the day, it just seems to me that they've just been abandoned by these powerful representatives who can move the needle with legislation within the Intelligence Authorization Act and the National Defense Authorization Act. And as well, I'd point out as well that the Trump administration, if Donald Trump wanted disclosure and if, his staff wanted disclosure, all they would do is pick up the phone, or the chief of staff would pick up the phone, call up the Gang of Eight leadership within the House and Senate, saying, look, it's your priority now to force through the UAP Disclosure Act, or if he doesn't do that, Trump would do it, through an executive order. But that's not happened. That's not happened at all. So I just feel they just feel really, really let down. And I think as well that before Trump became president, there did seem to be some expectations that he would take action, but that's not happened. And they kept on being told, advocates kept on being told, look, President Trump has lots on his plate at the moment, and you could argue that he's creating most of the problems, if anything. And it basically always keeps on being pushed back. I would say as well that part of the secrecy is actually within the White House itself. Look, there's different offices within the White House, and I would say that people should start looking in those places right under Trump's nose, because that's where a lot of the secrecy is as well. We remember Gary Nolan being threatened with being killed by someone within the White House. We remember Mark Andreessen being told again by someone within the White House that, they basically classified a whole section of nuclear energy, and they could do the same with AI as well. So who are these people in the White House making these threats as well? These are the things we've got to look at. These seemingly boring positions, these boring offices are actually, they carry a lot of weight.
Yeah, and when Trump decided to move in on Venezuela, somebody who was very vocal about supporting the UFO topic was Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence. And she was seemingly left out of that whole operation. I don't know what to think of that, though, but how did you see all that playing out? And do you think that they could be leaving her out of other things, such as this topic, maybe?
Yeah, I think so. I think she seems a little bit, very disconnected from the rest of the administration and cabinet members. I would say that's definitely a possibility. I know that her office is looking into the UAP topic. They're doing their investigation. We don't know what way that's going to go. It could be good news, could be bad news. All I would say is that, be prepared for Arrow to launch one final assault. What they'll do next, what they're going to do next. If we are kind of arguing here that the antibodies in terms of who want to keep the disclosure, if they want to keep the secrecy going, that they've nullified the press, they've nullified New York Times and the bigger publications no longer report on this topic. That they've nullified the key Senate and the House figures potentially if it does turn out that they're kind of staying away from this because of threats. And I would say their next target would probably likely be Burleson, Luna, and Burchett. They want those to. That's the next target. They basically want them to shut up. So maybe what they would do is they'll try to find some dirt on someone, release another damaging story, just to kind of like make the topic kryptonite to them or something, or I don't know, something else. Try to embarrass them, just anything. I think that's their next target. They just want anything to kind of this all to die down. And the flame is being kept alive at the moment mostly by those three representatives.
Yeah.
Stop doing hearings. Stop looking into this. I think that's what they want to do now. That's the next step.
Yeah. Fortunately, there's still independent media like you, like channels like this one that are gonna keep being very loud, and we're not gonna stop, are we?
No, we're not. But the thing is that about 2 or 3 years ago, when I started doing when I did a story like this, the expectation was that we were on a trajectory somewhere. This was all going to come out. That when you brought allegations like this out in stories, the next step would be that it's going to be verified sooner or later as the Senate gets into its investigation, and that just died away. So now you think you could release any story on UAP now, mostly, and it just won't lead anywhere, you know, because the news cycle and the way that the media works now, it's just like it's like TikTok, you know, you're doom scrolling, you're onto one, and then your attention gets taken. This is what happens, and the administration knows this as well. That, you know, there could be a bad news story today, but look, oh hey, we're gonna launch airstrikes on Iran. Remember that bad story that happened today? Well, that's gone away now in the news agenda. All of a sudden, this other story is taking the top news. So this is the thing, because it keeps on shuffling from one bit of drama to another. They know that they can get away with this kind of stuff, and if they don't want to prioritize UAP, no matter how bad the story is, they can get away with it by kind of distracting the media and distracting the public.
Can we explore and brainstorm a little bit about that? Because I'm a media analyst. I was trained like that in college, and something that I see that happened already is that during the election cycle, the podcast circuit with Joe Rogan and Theo Bon and all of these people, they effectively helped elect President Trump. So that proved to me that there is a lot of strength in new media like them, and that is independent media as well. And I mean, you and I, like, we're really small when it comes to this, and the topic is also very small when it comes to the overarching aspect of life in general. But when channels like that, like Tucker Carlson as well, like Joe Rogan, do report on stories like this one, that does create a massive impact. So if I think about the way in which I would counter a lot of what's going on right now, it would be to go to places like that, because those are not corrupted yet, as far as I know. How would you see that? Do you agree with that as well?
Well, firstly, I'd say that, look, the intelligence community and the CIA and whatnot, you know, they had a lot of traction with the old media, New York Times, you know, there are allegations that they were embedded reporters, basically, and you owed favors for stories and stuff, and you would lose access if you reported on this story. So they had a lot of control over that. So I do believe that there's an influence campaign over this new media as well, in terms of potential podcasts. You know, there's a video of someone who, I think was from the CIA, who was basically saying how they could...
Mr. Hughes.
Yeah, I think that was it. He was basically saying that this is how you could influence a podcaster to kind of like do your bidding. But also, you know, I think there's something going on when it comes to this as well, in terms of influencing the agenda, potentially. You know, the last kind of like revolution in news, you could argue, before the podcasts and stuff, was online media and Google. All of a sudden, you know, you had every news story you could search, you know, possibly want to search for at your fingertips. Well, what happened when we released the Office of Global Access story in the Daily Mail? All of a sudden, you know, you're getting these results on Google basically saying, look, this is a news story. Do you trust a news source? Ask yourself these questions. It's basically providing like a warning when it comes to this. And they did the same thing as well when I think it was over Plant 42 in California about 2 years ago, when UFOs were spotted in the sky. When that story was reported, the same message. And then you find out, well, actually, CIA, former CIA people are part of Google's trust and safety team. So, okay, so why are they there? And also Stephani O'Sullivan as well. Stephani O'Sullivan used to be an advisor to Google. So you've got all these people kind of like within the intelligence community who are kind of like, they're on top of this. You know, it's their plan basically to make sure that they've got control over all these new kind of like media platforms and stuff. And it wouldn't surprise me if they did the same with podcasts as well. You know, and being involved in politics myself, which I have for a long time, you know, I did comms and stuff, and I know how I know how I'd respond, you know, in a podcast. You know, you just see, yep, I'll look into this, give a throwaway answer or something, you know, enough to get elected, basically, enough to kind of like get people to vote for you just because they think you're going to do something about this, you know. we used to call it humoring people. One of my colleagues, Claire, that I used to work with, who was a counsellor, and she always used to say, "Yeah, you got to humour people." Or if someone's basically, if someone wasn't being honest with you, and they were trying to keep you occupied, and they're trying to keep you sweet or something, they're humouring you, and that's what happens sometimes. It could be that someone wants to set up a task force to look into UFOs and stuff, and you're like, okay, well, you have this task force, you just humour them. Nothing's ever really going to get done. We're not going to provide you any power to get the main witnesses in.
So essentially, well, you don't sound that optimistic about things as a media personality, but essentially what you're sort of telling me is that if we go back in history to the times when Project Mockingbird was uncovered and it was allegedly taken down, right, out of commission, it sort of feels like it didn't really, and that in the new era, it morphed into something that became embedded into social media. Do you think that's the case? I would think so, right? That's what you're basically signaling to.
Yeah, I would say that. I can't speak of exactly what they're doing, but the was it the Wall Street Journal article with Joel Shetman? I mean, how on earth do you get away with kind of like having a story of so many verifiable inaccuracies without at least having to kind of like do a correction, or an apology or anything like that? And it's just how do you get like that? What, it just doesn't make sense to me, because in the UK, if a journalist makes a mistake in a newspaper, like they have a corrections page like the next day or something, and they say it's wrong. I mean, it's just standard practice, and on a story like this with so many inaccuracies, so much just doesn't make sense when it comes to that. And again, a story like that, it's just used as cover, by representatives and stuff. Well, actually, as this story says, it's all being taken care of, and a journalist doesn't really get much opportunity to actually like interrogate them on that in terms of all the details and stuff. It's just
and there's also the conflicts of interest that are very blatant. Like the lady who wrote that story as well, she has a family member from one of the aerospace companies, or Ken Klippenstein, who wrote the article against Grush. His father worked for the DOE. So there's always that. There's always something like that happens. It's like, it can't be a coincidence, especially if it keeps happening, right?
Yeah, no, it can't be a coincidence when it comes like that. I mean, I'm just beside myself right now in terms of what's happened to the UAP topic since it started in the New York Times. New York Times refuses to report on it. They tried to get Washington Post to report on the Grush story, didn't want to report on it. I mean, despite the fact that it was such a big story, it's just like, and this is the thing, we may argue that these old media institutions, they don't have as much sway anymore, but they kind of like do, especially when it comes to like politicians and stuff, in the UK, we have something that we refer to as a Westminster bubble. And like all the politicians and stuff, they'll listen to the same radio shows, they'll read the same newspapers, and when it's in one of their radio shows or when it's in one of their newspapers that they trust, that they see as serious, that's when they start taking action when it comes to this. So it's still really deflating to me, just to see where we've come from, like in the last 3 years. So it's just been like one defeat after another in terms of what's been happening. We're not in a good situation at all at the moment, I'm afraid. I do hope something comes out. Who knows? We've got an unpredictable president in the White House, but at the moment, I'm not too optimistic.
Yeah, it seems like that, but I would ask you to not give up, man, because there's a lot of new people coming into this space, and there's people with a lot of influence that are coming into this space and that are willing to help. I know of a few. And I understand your frustration completely, because you've been like in the front lines for a while now. And I completely understand where you're coming from, but I am a little more optimistic in a different set of examples. But I want to ask you about this staffer issue because one of your other brilliant articles that you reported on, in which you quoted Psicoactivo and the interview that I did with Representative Burleson, thank you for that, by the way, is this one of Senator Mitch McConnell. And this staffer, whose name is, what's his face? Terry Carmack.
Yeah.
So my question is, though, there seemed to be sort of like a power structure where many of these senators that are really old or really busy, and even Congress people, they don't have time to deal with every little thing, every single thing that comes to their desk. And these staffers, who may or may not be influenced by external parties, they seem to have a lot of decision power, and they seem to have the power to sign stuff and all that. Do you think that it's possible that a lot of this conversation has been driven mainly by these staffers and not by the senators or representatives themselves?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. It's kind of like one of these things, it's like the government and the representatives aren't actually in charge. It's all kayfabe, as they would say, like wrestling. They act like they're in charge, but actually a lot of stuff's being done by their staffers or, people who aren't actually kind of like elected. We've got like a similar thing in the UK, like I'll give you an example, like a lot of lobbying firms in London now, their main thing now is to kind of like influence not politicians, but the non-elected people, like in the UK Treasury and stuff, when it comes to decisions that are being made, because they know that the politicians just don't have enough bandwidth to deal with these things, especially in the UK when they've got constituents, and in the US, when they've got fundraisers and stuff like that, they don't have the bandwidth. So if you can influence these people who are advising them, usually the politicians, on most occasions will go with it. And the deep state and the staffers who are working with them will make sure that they're given no other choice. In Downing Street, for example, we have a thing called a cabinet meeting in Downing Street. There's been the allegation that the meetings that are held, the decisions are made before the meeting takes place by all the people in the back room, the deep state, basically. And it's seen as a crisis if one of the politicians, you could be like a Secretary of State or whatever, goes against whatever the decision's supposed to be. And then it's crisis management. Okay, how do we deal with this? And I really do think the same thing's happening in the USA as well when it comes to a lot of these politicians, especially the old timers as well. And I do think there's an embedded relationship there between staffers, aerospace companies, and the deep state as well, people within the intelligence community.
Yeah, and this Carmack guy, he seems to have a lot of those connections directly to this deep state. Can you elaborate a little bit on what you know more about him that you may be able to share?
Yeah, he's just been there for a tremendously long time with McConnell, and it's just obvious that he has a lot of influence, and McConnell has long been seen as a really, really powerful member of the Senate. And I believe there's like one Politico article that basically says that his office was seen as a place for lobbyists because staff would go to work for him and then straight to another, firm to lobby or something like that. And, they'd go on to work for Lockheed, whoever, and then they would use their sway, and McConnell's office would always kind of be open ears into being swayed by the lobbyists. So it was kind of like a revolving door, basically, within his office. Obviously, Terry Carmack stayed there for a long time, but, it really, really would not surprise me if he's built up some relationships with people that used to work for his office, that have since gone on to be lobbyists, for kind of like, aerospace companies and other places that kind of like have a stake when it comes to UAP stuff. But yeah, it's an interesting one, because if you look at the UAPDA being blocked, and I look back on the stories I reported on it, each year it's been McConnell who's been named as being part of the resistance each year. So there's something to that, I feel.
Yeah. Man, those staffers, man. And on the other hand, there seem to be also staffers who seem to be helping, like Kirk McConnell, right?
Yeah. Kirk McConnell seems to be helping, and it's I don't know what Kirk experienced like when he was working in the Senate. I don't know if he got any pushback. I certainly know that his colleagues did get pushed back and did get threatened and stuff and intimidated. He's brilliant for like coming out and advocating for this. It's good on him, and obviously he knows the ins and outs of how it does work when it comes to staffers as well. So it's good to having that breadth of knowledge on board.
So let's talk about something a little different than politics before I let you go.
Sure.
I want to talk about experiences, if you're comfortable with that.
Sure.
Because, I don't know if you have ever had any sort of experience that you could deem either anomalous or, but you spoke about this Project Preserve Destiny topic with Dan Sherman. And he talks about these bloodlines that are like very present and very like sort of in the back of everyone's head, right? Do you have any opinion on that, on these bloodlines and this program and what Dan Sherman talked about? And have you ever had any sort of experiences or anybody from your vicinity that you know of that have experienced anything?
So this is a topic that I'm so interested in. Anyone who knows me knows that this is kind of like my thing. I love it, and I reporting a lot of this political stuff and all the mechanics and stuff. So hopefully one day I can like go here and start doing like big stories on it, that are kind of like stand up well and have lots of credibility. But members of my family are experiences, my brother, my mom, my cousin. My cousin showed me a story because I'm originally from a place called Reading in England, and it was,
like Ricky Gervais, right?
Yeah, like
He's
Ricky Gervais and Kate Winslet, and we've got some cool people from Reading, and so like there were UFOs seen over Reading, and my cousin showed me the article and said, actually, that witness there, that was me. I saw the UFOs. And she said that she's had experiences as well, like abduction experiences. So you've got that, which is crazy. And my mum basically said she was traced by a triangular UFO over Reading while walking her dog one time. And I think it was my mum as well who told me when I was younger that the airways had been interrupted as well in the local area. We had local TV covering our part of England, basically, and it had been interrupted by an announcement by Ashtar Command. It's kind of like this weird voice came on.
Oh, I remember that.
Accepted Mr. Smith's offer to negotiate an internal settlement based on one man, one vote. But, he says, there are conditions. These include stopping the execution of all captured prisoners of war, allowing Giro to take negotiation, being arrested. In Australia, Mr. Kerry Packer's cricketers are still pleading the right yesterday's High Court decision, which lifted the ban on them playing in Test matches.
This is the voice of Kumar, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as knights and servants, We speak to you now to service them as we have done to your brothers and sisters all over this, your planet Earth. We come to warn you of the destiny of your race and your world, so that you may communicate to your fellow beings the course you must take to avoid the disaster which threatens your world and the beings on other worlds around you. This is in order that you may share in great awakening as the planet passes into a new age of Aquarius. The new age will be a time of great peace and evolution for your race, but only your rulers are made aware of the evil forces that can overshadow their judgments. Be still now, and listen, or your chance may not come again. All your weapons of evil must be removed. The time for conflict is now past, and the race of which you are a part may proceed to the higher stages of its evolution, if you show yourselves worthy to do this.
Yeah. And like, you grew up just thinking, that never happened. My mum's just lying, you know. And then obviously in the advent of YouTube, it came out, the video came out. It's like, oh, what? That actually really happened. Like, they never found out who did it. It's you see stuff like that, and it's like, wow. So yeah, I'm just really, really keen to kind of like have the answers, you know. And another thing I'll just mention as well, that we went to Cornwall in the southwest of England a few years back now, and I just remember going there, just having a great holiday. And we didn't stay there this time, but we usually stay in a place called Gwyvion, and there's like a beach along there. It's beautiful, and you've got like these. You must see it one day. You've got these beautiful views towards a place called St. Ives Bay, and it just looks beautiful, basically. And then all of a sudden, like, I think when the debrief launched, there was this video that came out showing like a UFO captured by like a camera, like a webcam. That they have just like looking at certain places, and it was along that place basically where I usually go on holiday, and it showed like an object like going like zipping, going like this, going like this, going like this, and it's like crazy. And I looked today and I was like, oh gosh, like I was in Cornwall like just after that happened, like days after that happened. Like, that's so crazy, you know. It's so yeah, like, so I like to think I kind of like have a relation when it comes to UAP as well, but it's so tough, you know. Like, it really is tough, these UAP cases. Like, what is a UAP? And you know, when we're doing the videos and stuff, like, you know, we recently got the police helicopter video released relating to the Lakenheath drone incursions, and the official report said that the object had basically been an F-15, and the helicopter pilot thought it was a really strange drone, and he took evasive maneuvers and died because of it. But it was an F-15, and we didn't believe it. But then when we saw the video, we're like, actually, it is an F-15. But hey, there's a second object. We don't know what that is. Maybe that's like a drone or UAP or something. And then we got the radar information to see where the second F-15 was on that night, and it just so happened to be exactly where that other object was. So it's disappointing, but you know, it's it just I'm just looking for that one case, you know. Well, obviously there are other videos that, you know, we can't explain, and we do have more information about, but you know, I'm just hoping that we can kind of like have like an experience, a case where we do have that evidence. I think the closest we've got so far is Peter Corey, where he says he's got like a hair of an alien. That's a really good case, and I really love Peter. He's brilliant. And I just hope we just get the answers, you know, to all these really big questions, because I do feel that the phenomena does have a relationship, a deep embedded relationship with us humans, you know. I really do believe that. So yeah.
I was going to ask you about that. What do you think might be going on based on what you've been investigating so far in terms of the phenomenon, not the political stuff, you know? Do you think which hypothesis do you align yourself with the most at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm like George Knapp. The more that I learn, the more that I think I don't know. But it does seem to me that there are like multiple entities. Some are competing factions. There are like dogfights between different factions as well. Different origins. So you have a component potentially of kind of like ultra terrestrial or interdimensional, and like ET as well. Yeah, it looks to me like that could be the case, but I just don't know. What I feel is that we could get the answers by looking at like the modern kind of like conspiracy where it started. People will say that happened with Nazi Germany. That the SS, a component of the SS, made contact with kind of like a form of Nordics, basically, and apparently that was partially what it was about. Where they, what was the operation when they brought the German scientists to America called again?
Paperclip.
Yeah. So the overarching program of Paperclip, what it ran under, like an office or something, that was only disbanded under Kennedy, I think in 1960, 1961. It's been told to me that was the case because all the German scientists had been discovered by then, and they brought in who they needed, who they could. Apparently, what was happening was that they were the SS components who made contact with the Nordics were facilitating contact with the US government as well. So interesting. Again, just a story.
Yeah.
So yeah, that stuff just gets me interested. I feel that more that you can find about when that initial contact was made in the modern era, that's where you can kind of get more answers. Okay, who did they make contact with first? Where did they come from? What do we know about them? Are we still in contact with them? Were treaties signed? Did we make contact with someone else after? Or whatever, but that's kind of what I'm looking for, that timeline.
Yeah.
If such a thing exists.
Yeah. And there's also the Magenta crash as well that has been uncovered recently. Who knows what happened there too.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you, man, for your time. This was really, really cool. I would like to have another conversation with you down the line, and many if possible, because you're doing really important work, even though I see you are not that optimistic these days. I think that, for example, this latest that you just put out is extremely important, and I would encourage you to not lose that that encouragement to keep doing what you're doing, man. So thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for your work as well, because what you're doing is really important too. I mean, yeah, like you're getting some brilliant interviews, you're finding good information, what you're talking about. So yeah, just seeing like people like you and Matt as well, Matt Ford, and seeing you guys do it, it's like it gives me optimism as well, just like seeing that, and actually encouragement. Yeah, so thank you for what you do. So yeah, hopefully take it into a good year. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you in some way? Can you let us know? And well, obviously you can go to the Liberation Times, which is an amazing place where you're going to find all the latest on your work. But where else can people find you?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me as well on X as Chris UK Sharp. That's my handle. I got a Patreon as well. I do updates on the Patreon. Yeah, I made a decision a long time ago not to use adverts because I was being told that people within high places in government, in the US government, were like looking at the stories and they were just seeing like random adverts. Like, yeah, can't have that. So yeah, just totally community funded basically. So yeah, but I just on one final note, I think one thing that I will mention is that there is a book coming out in the summer by my friend Jonathan Kaplan. Jonathan Kaplan is a very, very important person. He is a King's Counsel barrister, one of the most successful barristers in the world, and he is coming out with a UAP book. So watch his space.
It's about the king, right?
So it's not about the king, but he all I would say is that he's got lots of connections in relation to UAP world, and he's been able to find out information that's not been revealed before. And,
Awesome.
it will be
Wow, that's exciting. Awesome. Last question, though. This comes from my friends at Living Life Consciously. And I always ask this to some of my guests. What is your biggest hope for the future of humanity?
My biggest hope would be that we can find what our meaning is and what the meaning of life is, and whether we can. Sorry, there's lots of answers. Life after death. What is this all about? Is there life after death? And does consciousness continue living? And if so, like, what is the reason behind that? That's what I'm fascinated by, consciousness. So that's I want to know. I want to know what consciousness is. I want to know if it continues after death. I want to know why we're here, what our purpose is, and I just get the feeling that an intelligence that's far more advanced than us may know a lot of the answers that we don't. And I'm hopeful as well that some of the technologies that are emergent, as hopefully being reverse engineered, could kind of stop some of the suffering that humanity goes through in terms of diseases and other such things. So yeah, those kind of my hopes, basically.
Thank you, man. And thank you for your work. And you guys know what to do. Like, subscribe, all the thing. I'll see you around, and I'll see you soon again, Chris. Keep killing it, brother.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Let Stephanie do it again. And you wear a football shirt as well next time, yeah?
Yeah, I will. I promise. All right, brother.
Love it. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.